In the quiet aftermath of the Second World War, a profound silence fell over Europe. The conflict had ended, but the true scale of its horror was only just beginning to be understood. Cities lay in ruins, and entire populations had been displaced or had vanished completely. Amidst this devastation, the world grappled with an unprecedented question. How could justice be served for crimes so vast, so systematic, that they defied all existing laws? The answer would come from a German city, itself scarred by the war, a place called Nuremberg. It was here that the victorious Allied powers, the United States, Great Britain, France, and the Soviet Union, came together to hold the leaders of Nazi Germany accountable for their actions. The decision to conduct public trials was a monumental one. It marked a departure from the historical norm, where defeated leaders were often executed without legal process, or simply allowed to fade into obscurity. Instead, the Allies chose the path of law. They sought to create a meticulous and transparent record of the atrocities committed, not just for the sake of punishment, but for the sake of history itself. They wanted to show the world and future generations that even in the chaos of war, individuals are responsible for their choices. Nuremberg was to be more than a trial of men. It was to be a trial of a brutal ideology, documented with evidence and testimony for all to see. The setting itself was deeply symbolic. Nuremberg had been the stage for the Nazi Party's massive theatrical rallies, spectacles of power designed to mesmerize and intimidate. It was where the infamous Nuremberg laws were enacted in 1935, stripping Jewish citizens of their rights and paving the way for the Holocaust. Now, in the very same city, the surviving architects of that regime would face a different kind of theater, a courtroom. The Palace of Justice, one of the few large buildings left standing, became the venue for this historic undertaking. The symbolism was powerful. The rule of law was being re-established in the very place where it had been so profoundly corrupted and dismantled. And so, on the 20th of November 1945, the International Military Tribunal began its proceedings. The world watched with bated breath. This was a moment of extraordinary significance for humanity. For the first time, an international court was established to prosecute political and military leaders for aggression and brutality. The trials aimed to peel back the layers of denial and propaganda, to expose the cold, bureaucratic machinery of genocide. They represented a fragile hope that from the ashes of the most destructive war in history, a new standard of international justice could be forged, one that would hold even the most powerful accountable for their crimes against our shared humanity. The Nuremberg trials were a complex and groundbreaking legal endeavor. At the heart of the proceedings were 24 of the most prominent Nazi officials who had been captured. These men were not low-level soldiers. They were high-ranking politicians, military commanders, and industrialists, including Hermann Göring, the head of the Luftwaffe, and Rudolf Hess, Hitler's former deputy. Each defendant was charged with one or more of 4 counts. Media group, legal documents from Nuremberg trials, judges reading charges in Nuremberg courtroom at distribute_equally, conspiracy to commit crimes, crimes against peace, war crimes, and a new profoundly important charge, crimes against humanity. The prosecution meticulously assembled a mountain of evidence, much of it consisting of the Nazis' own obsessively detailed records, which documented their horrific plans and actions in their own words. The process was designed to be fair and impartial, a stark contrast to the sham trials conducted by the Nazi regime itself. Each defendant was entitled to a lawyer, the right to present evidence in their defense, and the right to cross-examine witnesses. The proceedings were translated simultaneously into 4 languages: English, French, Russian, and German. A remarkable technological feat for the time. This ensured that everyone in the courtroom and the millions listening on radios around the world could understand what was happening. The objective was not just to secure convictions, but to establish a credible, irrefutable historical record based on evidence and due process, setting a new standard for international law. One of the greatest challenges for the tribunal was that many of the acts committed by the defendants were not technically illegal under German law at the time they were perpetrated. The Nazis had simply rewritten the laws to suit their own terrible agenda. To overcome this, the prosecutors argued that there are certain actions so monstrous, so contrary to the basic principles of human dignity, that they are crimes regardless of any national law. This principle that some acts are universally wrong formed the very foundation of the trials. It established that obedience to a national government is not a valid defense when one is ordered to commit atrocities against fellow human beings. The evidence presented was harrowing and undeniable. The court saw films of liberated concentration camps, revealing the skeletal figures of survivors and the unimaginable scale of the killing. They heard testimony from those who had endured the horrors and saw the meticulous German documents that laid out the plans for conquest and extermination. This overwhelming body of proof left no room for doubt about what had occurred. It was a methodical, almost scientific presentation of evil. The trials were transforming the abstract notion of mass atrocity into a concrete, documented reality, ensuring that the world could never claim it did not know what had happened. Perhaps the most enduring legacy of the Nuremberg trials was the legal framework it created. Before Nuremberg, there was no internationally accepted legal term for the systematic, state-sponsored annihilation of an entire group of people. The Polish Jewish lawyer Raphael Lemkin had coined the term genocide in 1944, combining the Greek word genos, meaning race or tribe, with the Latin seed, meaning to kill. The Nuremberg Charter did not use this exact word, but it prosecuted the acts that defined it. The trials provided the crucial momentum that led to the United Nations adopting the Genocide Convention in 1948, formally making genocide a crime under international law and obligating nations to prevent and punish it. Another revolutionary legal concept solidified at Nuremberg was crimes against humanity. This charge was designed to address acts of persecution, enslavement, and extermination committed against any civilian population, including a nation's own citizens. Before this, international law primarily governed how states treated other states, not how they treated their own people. The concept of crimes against humanity established a powerful new principle that the international community has a right and a duty to intervene when a government inflicts unimaginable cruelty upon its population. It affirmed that every individual possesses fundamental rights that transcend national borders and laws. The trials also firmly established the principle of individual criminal responsibility. For centuries, acts of war were often seen as the actions of a state, for which individuals could not be held personally liable. The Nuremberg defense, often summarized as "I was only following orders," was systematically rejected by the tribunal. The judges ruled that military or political leaders cannot hide behind their official positions or claim they were merely cogs in a machine. This principle meant that individuals, no matter their rank, are accountable for their choices. It sent a clear message to future leaders that they would be held personally responsible for ordering or committing war crimes. These legal innovations, genocide, crimes against humanity, and individual responsibility, did not emerge from a vacuum, but Nuremberg was where they were first applied with such force and clarity on the world stage. The trials created what became known as the Nuremberg Principles, a set of guidelines for determining what constitutes a war crime. These principles were later affirmed by the United Nations and have become the bedrock of modern international criminal law. They provided the essential vocabulary and legal structure needed to prosecute mass atrocities, creating tools for justice that simply had not existed before that time. The judgment at Nuremberg, delivered in October 1946, was a watershed moment. 12 of the defendants were sentenced to death, others received long prison sentences, and 3 were acquitted. But the true impact of the trials extends far beyond the fate of those individual men. Their greatest legacy is the powerful idea that justice can and must follow even the most catastrophic of human events. Nuremberg represented a promise to the victims, a promise that their suffering would be acknowledged and that the world would strive to prevent such horrors from ever happening again. It was a declaration that the rule of law must prevail over the rule of force. The principles forged at Nuremberg have had a profound and lasting influence on the world. They laid the groundwork for the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948 and have inspired the creation of subsequent international courts. When atrocities occurred in places like the former Yugoslavia and Rwanda in the 1990s, the world turned to the precedent set at Nuremberg to establish tribunals to prosecute those responsible for genocide and ethnic cleansing. The establishment of the Permanent International Criminal Court in 2002 is the direct descendant of the vision articulated in that German courtroom so many decades ago. Of course, the Nuremberg promise has not always been fulfilled. Since 1945, the world has witnessed other genocides and mass atrocities, and many perpetrators have escaped justice. The enforcement of international law remains a complex and often political challenge, reliant on the cooperation of nations. Yet, the absence of perfect justice does not diminish the importance of the standard that Nuremberg set. It remains a powerful symbol, a benchmark against which the actions of leaders and nations are measured. It provides a legal and moral framework for holding power to account, even when it seems impossible. Ultimately, the Nuremberg Trials were a testament to a remarkable human endeavor. In the face of utter despair, the international community chose to build something new, a system of justice for crimes that once seemed beyond its reach. The trials taught us that memory is a form of justice and that documenting crimes is a vital act of defiance against those who would seek to deny or distort the past. The echoes of Nuremberg remind us that the pursuit of accountability is a continuous journey. It is our shared responsibility to uphold these principles and to strive for a world where justice is not just a response to tragedy, but a force for preventing it.